5th anniversary, government restates commitment to getting remaining Chibok schoolgirls back.
The next line of action is we take them to the courts now.
Do multiple registration, go to jail, JAMB tells candidates.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on the gains of the 140th Interparliamentary Union General Assembly, plus political developments in the Sudan.
The parliament is accepted across the world as a way of having representatives of the people who speak for them, pursue their aspirations, and this seems to play a very important role in the political, social, and economic life of the global community.
That's right, Kirian. You know, parliaments come in different forms and usually at various levels of governance, depending on whichever a community or a society decides to adopt. And that explains the availability of parliaments at local, national, and international levels.
Well, just a few weeks from now, Nigerian parliamentarians elected at the just concluded polls will take the oath and commence legislative duties at the state and national levels. Already, those at the national level have been equipped to take task after undergoing inductions that ended last Friday.
Now, while the legislators elect were being put through the rudiments of lawmaking and representation, some others who are already, of course, in parliament were in Doha, Qatar for the 140th Interparliamentary Union General Assembly, during which Nigeria, as one of the members of the 178 member organization, participated and also made some representations on the issues that were discussed.
Now, the 140th General Assembly of the IPU, with the theme Parliaments as Platforms to Enhance Education for Peace, Security, and the Rule of Law, was said to have dwelt on these issues and made far-reaching resolutions that will impact on the lives of more than 6.5 billion of the world's 7 billion people who live in countries whose parliaments are members.
All right, Kira, now that'll be very interesting to hear as the three thematic areas of the 2019 General Assembly, namely education, peace, and security, resonate with some of the current challenges that the country, that's Nigeria, is having, including, of course, the phenomenon of out-of-school children, communal clashes, banditry, and insurgency. And therefore, anything that will help enhance government's approach to dealing with the challenges of education, peace, and security will readily come in handy.
All right, well, Kingsley, the experience of the IPU having been in existence since 1889 and with about 800 parliamentarians from across the world attending the 140th General Assembly in Doha, I am sure whatever resolutions are taken will make impact.
Well, we hope so, Kieran, as the global organization of national parliaments that work with parliaments to safeguard peace and drive positive democratic change through political dialogue and concrete action. We should not, of course, expect anything less.
So what are the takeaways from the 140th Interparliamentary Union General Assembly? What did Nigeria present at the sessions? How will the resolutions on this theme support Nigeria's quest for peace and security? How binding are the resolutions of the IPU?
All right, now we have some of the participants and experts in international relations to tell us by way of responses to those questions shortly. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I'd like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, during which, of course, we shall also discuss the political developments in the Sudan. And I am Kirin Umai, also thanking you for waking up with us this morning. And as usual, we'll present our companion segments, which include newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. Before then, Nolene Abel Ame has the early morning news. Nolene, good morning.
Good morning to you, Kirian and Kingsley. Good morning to you, Nigeria. Here is the early morning news. Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed is set to commence another round of media interaction and engagements with some global affairs policy shapers in the United States. In an interview with correspondent Anthony Forson, the minister explained the rationale behind the media interaction.
Or advance, arguments and provide clarification on issues of governance, as the case might be. But what is very significant this year is that this is coming on the heels of the last general election at which the president was re-elected, and it's quite important to also see the opportunity to disabuse the minds of some people as to the outcome of the election.
Yesterday marked the 5th year since the adoption of more than 200 Chibok schoolgirls by Boko Haram insurgents, and their families have remained hopeful they will be reunited. In commemoration, parents of the girls in captivity and stakeholders campaigning for their return have made passionate appeals to the abductors for a lasting ceasefire and release of the 112 girls still in their custody. Chief of Air Staff inaugurates technical crew room. The Nigerian Air Force says the welfare of troops in the front line is a key component of ensuring enhanced performance in the ongoing counter-insurgency operations.
The thing is not just about fighting, it's equally about ensuring that the personnel that are fighting are taken care of. Make use of these facilities and to also reciprocate the gesture and to make sure that they keep working hard to support the operation, not only in the northeast, but I'm sure you are aware we are operating in the northwest as well. And we are going to continue to work around the clock to ensure that every Nigerian can go about his or her business without any hindrance.
The Ministry of Defense has made clarifications on news from some media organizations alleging that the Minister of Defense, Mansour Ali, accused some traditional rulers in states affected by banditry of conniving with bandits. In a statement signed by the Public Relations Officer to the Minister of Defense, Colonel Tukur Gusau says the said statement by the minister is not meant to despise the country's highly revered traditional rulers in the states affected. It, however, said caution to some community leaders and their surrogates based on security reports available to the Ministry of Defense, which cannot be divulged to the general public where necessary. The Joint Admission and Matriculation Board JAMB has warned candidates writing the Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination against multiple registration or face wrath of the law. JAMB Registrar Professor Ishaq Oloide gave the warning in Sokoto State, where some candidates were caught for multiple registrations.
To the courts now. That's it. We will bring all of them from all over the country. We have identified all of them, but we cannot pick all of them. We'll be picking representatives from each of the states so that it will have federal character. That's all.
The federal government is rehabilitating all federal roads in Nasarawa State to promote safety and economic activities. The first phase is covering Abuja to Makurdi axis.
At the end of this operation, it is expected that this highway will be free of pothole, thereby making the road safe for motorists. And at the end, the rate of road traffic crashes on this road will be minimized drastically.
As we are coming, there's no pothole now.
The Nigerian Christian Pilgrims Commission has urged Christian bodies in Nigeria to build worship centers in the state of Israel to serve as a place of worship for Nigerians who visit on pilgrimage. Executive Secretary, Nigeria Christian Pilgrims Commission, Reverend Uja To Uja, who said this at the Commission's annual Thanksgiving service in Abuja, also added that it will also be a platform to improve the country's foreign policy with Israel.
In our pilgrimage activity, Nigeria is a nation created by God and given to us for the purpose of global evangelization.
Other than once in a while, we pause just to appreciate the cost of this grace that we have come to enjoy as Christians.
That's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kirian and Kingsley after this break. Thank you for watching.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Now, business time. Small business owners call for improved business environment to grow. Details on business news with Chimaobi Watanaji.
Some of the major problems facing the growth of small and medium enterprises in Nigeria include access to finance and credit facilities, multi-taxation and bureaucratic bottlenecks by licensing agencies of government in charge of business registration and much more. This has caused untold hardship to young people seeking to establish their businesses. To solve this challenge, the federal government is seeking to bring small business owners together under the Business 360 platform to help interface with government agencies and organizations involved in the growth of micro, small and medium enterprises in the country, to serve as a one-stop shop for aspiring entrepreneurs and small business owners in Abuja and beyond.
The essence of doing that is for such bodies to look into the problems that the MSMEs face while doing their businesses and provide solutions there and then. It's not about you taking the office back to your office. No, you have to provide the solution there and then.
We face it every day. People complain every day. When you're taxed so many times, the chances of being encouraged to do the business becomes slim. You don't want to do the business anymore. And then how do you expand the economy and employ people if the business is shrinking instead of expanding because you have too many taxes? And then funding for some businesses that are ready and able to take on extra funds, because some people think they need funding, but no, they don't need funding. They need to refine their processes.
Meanwhile, the Nigerian equities market extended its last run this week with the all-share index shedding 0.19% to close at 29,560.47 points, while market capitalization lost 21 billion naira. This performance was largely driven by bearish sentiments in the breweries, personal care, food and insurance indices, offsetting the mild gains in banking, cement and oil and gas sector. With business news, Chimobi Walter Naji. All right, thank you very much, Chimobi Walter Naji, for the business package. Newspaper review is next for us on the program.
All right, now let's welcome Bayo Atoyebi, our newspaper reviewer, for the Monday's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. You're welcome, Bayo.
Good morning, Kirian. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Right, Bayo, pleasure to have you join us. We hope you had a lovely weekend. There's a lot of sporting activities. But the biggest story, obviously, was yesterday, following the resurgence of Tiger Woods.
I was indeed happy for him, because for nearly 15 years now.
11 years,
yeah, 11 years, actually, and he has not been able to, lay hands on any meaningful trophy.
On a major. Yes. It was his 5th major at Augusta.
For me, the highlight was under 17 that surmounted Tanzania.
And that's 5-4.
They are on their path to the 3rd AFCON championship.
Well, that's right. Congratulations to them. But I'm saying on the global stage, the story was Tiger.
My charity is beginning at home.
Yeah, 15th major. Yes. I like the way Eurosport captured it. Yes. It says Tiger Woods, roars from the wilderness.
My charity is beginning at home.
That's right.
We have about 5 newspapers to review this morning. Of course, plus the editorial. And I'd like to begin with the Nigerian Pilot. Nigerian Pilot newspaper this morning has some striking headlines. We have below the nameplate, reject IMF's petroleum subsidy removal, NLC cautions federal government. That story can be found on page 8. Now, police kill 9 kidnappers operating along Abuja-Kaduna Highway. It's on page 5. Now, the lead story on the Nigerian Pilot We didn't transmit result through server, INEC tells tribunal. With 4 riders, says it has no server that contains the 2019 election result. Insists election was conducted manually in accordance with the law. Card reader only used for authenticating voters, not for counting. Set to call 83 witnesses in its defense. The story is also on page 8. Now, below the photograph on the Nigerian pilot, of course, you would see that photograph, of course, is the celebration of the Palm Sunday that took place yesterday at various Christian churches across the nation. But below that, to have other stories. Atiku denounces APC's claim on his birth, described it as pedestrian and ridiculous. It's on page 8 as well. And then other stories at the foot of the Nigerian pilot include Air Force kills several bandits, destroys logistics store in Kagara Forest, page 10. We will prosecute those who caused failure of Skybank. That says NDIC. It's on page 11. And IPU Court President Maman Nasir is dead. 42 has details. Pensioners demand 30,000 minimum wage payment of outstanding emoluments. It's on page 10. Now, no amount of blackmail will hinder sugarcane project, says Governor Badaru, on page 6.
All right, Kieran, the Punch and the Daily Independent, which I also have different stories. But let's just begin with the Punch, above the nameplate of the Punch. It says, Nigeria's daily petrol supply now 56 million liters. That's according to the PPPR. Details of that can be found on page 32. Below that, it says Zamfara airstrikes. We are compiling dead civilians' names. Emirs reply NAF. That's Nigerian Air Force. 9th Assembly use 2011 rule book for voting. Enang tells lawmakers. And NEF, that's Northern Elders Forum, backs Dangote, knocks northern governors for rising poverty. An earpiece beside the nameplate of the Punch says no plan to remove fuel subsidy. Federal government insists. With the rider, IMF's advice on subsidy poisonous, say Nupeng and Pengansan. The lead story is on pension, 8.7 trillion naira pension fund. Pencom bars PFAs from investing in bonds issued by 9 states. Composite photographs on the front page there from the Palm Sunday activities that took place yesterday. Below that says Junkun Group blames Taraba killings on government inaction and impunity. Police kill 9 bandits, arrest 2 on Abuja Kaduna Highway, and cultists on the rampage in Lagos behead 2, kill 3 others. It is on pages 4 and 5. And Bio, maybe I just run quickly through also the Daily Independent, because some of the stories are virtually similar. Let me just, Daily Independent now, very quickly. Above the nameplate, you have a story. ExxonMobil and others not exiting Nigeria, that's according to Kachuku, assures of sufficient fuel in the country. And then you have the story there of Tiger Woods. Says Tiger Woods wins first Masters. Since that's an error there, that's a printer's devil. It's not 2005, it's 2008. Details can be found on page 47, because on page 47, the correct year is reflected. National Assembly leadership, APC asks members and PDP to respect its decision. Says party does not require PDP support to produce Senate president, to release zoning plan for other Senate and Reps principal positions soon. You have the story there of the killing in Lagos by Cotsman, and again, herdsmen kill 3 farmers in Delta. Benue University confirms drowning of 2 students. And secondly, story they're also talking about the denial of any plan to remove fuel subsidy by the federal government. Cameroonian claim attempt by APC to divert attention from Atiku's petition. That's according to PDP.
Yes, the Minister for Finance is on record as saying that the federal government will not contemplate removing subsidy at this moment because there are no buffers to cushion the effect. The Minister of Finance, Ajia Zainab Ahmed, clarified that the closure at the briefing of the annual spring meeting of the IMF and World Bank in Washington. She said, as plausible as the argument to remove subsidy may sound, Nigeria is not ready for it at this moment. Flanked by the governor of the central bank and the minister for budget and national planning, the minister of finance said even the economic management team had discussed it frequently but have not found a viable alternative. So not yet removal for subsidy. Meanwhile, the petrol stations in Lagos, Oyo, Ogun, and Osun are said not to be selling fuel yesterday. Daily Trust report that hoarding is particularly dangerous and critical at this time. The Petroleum Product Pricing Regulatory Agency has clarified that petrol supply was about 46 million liters in 2017. In 2019, it is now 56 million, and there is currently 21-day supply sufficiency, and so there is no alarm, and there shouldn't be any panic buying. The PPPRA says that they will put measures in place to check stations that are holding. Meanwhile, Daily Trust has reported that sanity has returned to the Kaduna-Abuja highway, and it looks like it is now the safest in the country. If you recall, when the flights for Abuja were diverted to Kaduna, that highway became the safest in the country. Now, currently, those few vehicles that ply the road resort to very high speed unusually. But the villagers along the expressway have testified that criminals have abandoned Regina, particularly the nexus of their surroundings. Before now, they said that the criminals came to the even villages riding on the motorbikes. They said, we know them, but we could not say anything to them. In the last 1 week, they have left. And now, our farmers are able to go to farm and continue farming. It may be recalled that the Acting Inspector General of Police said that they have arrested many of the kidnappers and they have instituted 24 hours patrol on the Kaduna-Abuja highway. Meanwhile, there's debate among prominent persons on the election in the Senate. The rule book to be adopted for election or the presidential election has become a contention. The presidential liaison, that is the senior special assistant to the Mr. President on National Assembly matters, Eta Enang, says that National Assembly could not use the 2015 rule book. He says that rather it is the 2011 rule book that has to be used. He says that he raised the objection that the induction of lecture for new legislators, he posited that nothing can be done on the floor of the House on that day because the members elected are not legislators and they cannot do any amendment, adding that until the senators elect are sworn in, they cannot participate in amendment of the rule book. He says the management that amended the rule book is not acceptable because it is there in the rule of the Senate that only the Senate can regulate its proceedings. However, the presiding chairman at the inauguration, the Deputy Senate President, also retorted. He says that the Deputy President says that the National Assembly management can make new rules for the Senate, particularly during the time when the Senate has been dissolved and the incoming Senate has not been inaugurated. He also added that the only legal rule known to the National Assembly position is 2011, which canvasses for open ballot. He however says the 2015 version recommends for open secret ballot. So the contention now is that who will bail the cat? Meanwhile, it has become clear, and another group of the All Progressive Congress former legislators in the House of Rep has said that the All Progressive Congress cannot leave the tussle of the leadership position alone. He said that the former members led by Yusuf Sani actually contended that it is because that the All Progressive Congress left it. That was why they had a Senate that was rebellious and they had a lot of difficulty in passing their legislation. He said that he enjoined the party to step up and provide a direction for the National Assembly.
All right, on this issue of rule book, is becoming, recall what happened, shortly when the Assembly was sworn in. There was this argument on the rule book that was adopted for the election, and some were even quizzed, for introducing what was not in the book or something.
Well, there were allegations of forgery.
Of forgery, yes.
The 2015 rule book that was used. But the first question to ask is, what is the status of the 2015 rule book that was used? I think that's the business of the lawmakers themselves. But assuming there's any dispute, then obviously they will go to the courts to seek clarification, to say which is the appropriate rule book to use. But no outsider can prescribe for the lawmakers which of the rules, to adopt.
Okay, now on Leadership newspaper this morning, below the nameplate of the paper, federal government to issue 15 billion naira green bond for critical sectors. And the lead story, why we can't remove fuel subsidy now. Bayo has also done an analysis on that. And then at the foot of the Leadership newspaper, National Assembly leadership, we are not opposed to lobbying PDP senators, says APC. It's on page 5. We've read also this, police kill 9 bandits on Abuja Kaduna Road. NAF loses airman in parachuting accident. Presidency clarifies for 42 billion naira special economic zones allocation. Is on page 5. Palm Sunday, Christians urge to emulate Christ's humility. And Barry, if I may just run through this so you can now conclude your analysis on the Daily Trust newspaper. Northern Elders, security has collapsed, and there is on page 4 of Daily Trust newspaper. Well, we've read a number of stories like no plans to remove fuel subsidy, and of course the NAF airman. Now, the lead story on the Daily Trust, water scarcity raises disease fears in states. And at the foot of the newspaper, National Assembly, Lawan, others can meet opposition, says APC. Enough of empty promises, Chibok girls' parents tell federal government, on page 4. American Airlines extends Boeing 737 MAX freeze. And there's one last story here I would like us to share, and that's on the Leadership newspaper. The world's largest plane makes first flight. That was yesterday.
Yeah, test flight. We'll see how it goes. It was in California.
Yes, California.
So we'll see how it goes. There are frequent innovations, in the airline industry or the aircraft manufacturers. But before some of those things become available commercially, it might take a while. Exactly. If you recall, some years ago, there was a test flight of a solar powered. Solar.
We've not heard about it.
Yeah, well,
It's not to be commercially viable or not safe.
We're not sure, but they are in the laboratory. They are working, and all of one day you just hear that no aircraft can now fly without your fuel. And fuel, by the way, I mean you see the panic that occurred, even in the Federal Capital Territory on Friday. If you recall, Bayo, there were stories earlier that people were avoiding. By Friday, once the social media was abuzz with the fact that, there was going to be scarcity, some filling stations in Abuja were already
shut down.
Yes,
shut down.
No fuel.
We are hoarding the fuel.
Absolutely.
To make it difficult for Nigerians.
Two of them. No fuel, no Friday. By Saturday, Sunday, they were they were selling, and there were no new supplies.
I think the Department of Petroleum Resources must get its acts together, because it is not far-fetched. IMF, within the week, came with the pronouncement that Nigeria must do something about subsidy. Probably that was the trigger alarm. Otherwise, there's no cause for any such alarm, because NNPC, PPP, RA had all assured that there was sufficiency of petrol. But all of a sudden, you have found filling stations using a few number of pumps, apparently holding...
Absolutely, no fuel.
I had to ask a question yesterday. When did you get this supply? Because I was there the previous day in the evening. Yes. You are not selling. Then this morning, Sunday morning, Absolutely. You are selling. So when did the fuel come?
The other story is the one Kingsley read, the trouble in Taraba, Benue. There's been clashes between traders, particularly about Kente market. Some ethnic group, Jukun people, say it is their traditional market, and they excluded the DT from trading there. That has become a big problem, and there have been crises, there have been killings, and then burning of houses. However, the governors of Benue and Taraba are to meet today on Monday to find lasting solutions to that. This is a follow-up of the local government chairman for the 3 local governments from Benue and 2 from on Taraba that met at the palace of the Akuka to try and resolve that issue.
All right, Bayo, thanks a lot. Let's go over now to the editorial, and it's on the move to refresh the constitutions at page 5. Bayo.
Yes, it's not far-fetched. The Al Jazeera paper is happy on the fact that the 68 items on the exclusive legislative list is an overload, and therefore many of it has to be shed to increase those on the concurrent list, which is 26. And the editorial goes to list about 22 items that he thinks that the National Assembly members should critically look at and completely deburden from the exclusive legislative gift. And it is arguing that all things being equal, the unbundling will help the Nigerian economy and make our federal system more federal than expected, rather than belabor the center, which everybody politically has been complaining about.
Okay, Bayo, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'll see you again tomorrow. All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We took a short break now. When we return, we get ahead with our conversation segment.
You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
And you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, and it's good to have you join us once again. And of course, we have introduced our topic for today, but live in the studio to discuss the topic, we have Senator Kabiru Gaya, Chairman, Senate Committee on Works. It's good to have you join us this morning, sir.
Good morning, Nigerians. How are you today?
And we also have in our studio Honorable Nnanna Obokwe. Of course, he's also part of our discussion this morning. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, and to set the stage for our discussion this morning, here is Oyemi Ajayi with a background report.
The Interparliamentary Union, established in 1889, is an international organization of the parliaments of sovereign states with a mission to promote democracy and interparliamentary dialogue. It has membership of the national parliaments of 178 countries and has played a major role in the establishment of the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague. Deliberations at the 148th edition of the meeting held in Doha, Qatar, was not in any way different from the purpose of establishment, as delegates of member countries, including Nigeria, expressed their views, calling on parliamentarians to raise their voices against violators of international law and human rights, while calling for better steps to enhance cooperation among states. With the theme Parliaments as Platform to Enhance Education for Peace, Security and the Rule of Law, the parliamentarians emphasized the importance of education, which is believed to lead to more just and equitable societies by eradicating ignorance for peace, security, and the rule of law. Also, challenges of terrorism and the effects of hate speech, which has led to unfair policies by many states, thereby threatening international peace and security. With the meeting over and delegates back to their respective countries, how would the resolutions made be enforced? How effective would it be in the development of democracy in the world, and how better can international law be observed and respected? Guest on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria will be providing answers shortly.
All right, thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for that background. My colleague Kieran already introduced the two guests who are with us here. First, let's begin with distinguished Senator Kabiru Gaya. Of course, we have a sense of what the IPU is from the background report by our correspondent. But for this particular session that is just ended in Doha, Qatar, what was the Nigerian delegation experience?
Well, first of all, generally IPU goes around, the Interparliamentary Union team, we go around for meetings twice in a year, one in Geneva, one in any other country that solicit to host the program. So last one were in Qatar, and the major issues of discussions were based on education, security, health, and good governance. These are most of the issues we discussed. And as representing a member of the committee and also a vice president Interparliamentary Union, I was able to deliver the president's speech, which I addressed the whole countries. We have 178 countries that are member countries, and the program was full. Virtually every member was there. And there are also other meetings here and there, the African group. A day before the program, we had the African group meeting, discuss the problems within Africa, the issue of insecurity, the Boko Haram, all other issues related, even to health, the early the children that die in early age, the women that lose their lives every year on pregnancy and so on. Then the problem we're facing in Nigeria, the Boko Haram issue, we all raised it during our speech, our presentation. And then after that, there are resolutions on those speeches, what the parliamentarians should do. Even the issue of SDG came out, how we could monitor the SDG programs and so on, how we could impact the life of citizens of our countries in that aspect. And at least that was the basic things we usually discuss. And for any country that has a major problem, we also introduce like an emergency issue item which could be discussed and agreed to discuss the issues of those problems. And when there was issue of migrations in those last 2 years, we were able to discuss the issue, come up with the resolutions. Now the issue of insecurity, the Boko Haram, in the issue in Taraba, Zamfara State, and so on. So all these issues were discussed, and ideas were shared, and resolutions were reached.
All right, thank you. Let's be a little bit more specific. We're considering the theme of this meeting, which says Parliament as platforms for to enhance education, for peace, rule of law, and of course security. We would like to know what exactly did Nigeria present on that occasion. Of course, you have given us a general an overview, of what you presented. But what were the specific things that Nigeria presented at the occasion?
In my speech to the Governing Council, we discussed the issue really mainly on the security and how we overcome it, how we got into the problem, the issue of this insecurity, how we try to, like the issue of Northeast, where our children were not able to go to school, schools were destroyed, lives were lost. So we discussed how we came up with it, that the military took over some places, and we asked people to go back to their villages, and infrastructural development was there. Roads, we started building roads, houses, and even the schools. So how to encourage the people in that area to go back to school and run their normal lives. And then we also talk about how the intervention of the military, what we did to try and maintain peace, and then try to be able to punish those who are found wanting. We did all, those are some of the issues we really raised. We raised our problems, and we took up the solutions Nigeria started taking.
All right, thank you very much, Senator Kabiru Gaya. Let's bring in Honorable Nana Igbokwe. Give us a sense of what your own experience was like at the IPU.
Yes, IPU is a global body for parliaments. It serves as a forum where national parliaments come together, like distinguished senator has said, and there's issues concerning them. And also, the body also have an oversight function, also to hold national parliaments accountable for issues, reports emanating from their country, and want to see how, as a parliament, you are helping to address those issues, like he said, the insecurity, education issue, as a result of those displaced from the Boko Haram crisis. And this was issue we had to present. We will have opportunity to share experiences with other nations, other parliaments who have similar problem and how they are also handling it, so we can learn from each other. But most importantly, they want to see the inputs, what you are bringing in from the last assembly and conferences. How have the parliament been able to implement some of the resolution? And you expect a country-by-country report. And in this case, I think Nigeria, we were proud to state that we happen to be the first African country to have implemented the IPU resolution on youth participation and inclusion and participation in politics by the passage of the Not Too Young to Run bill, which has eventually translated into being part of the Constitution. And we can see the effect with the number of young people who had participated. It also increased the number of registration at this point because it elicited the interest of young people now coming into politics now that they are being given sense of recognition. And thereafter, and one thing about the global body, like we say, we champion peace, and we also see how to, the IPU also serve as a lobby group and a pressure group, and where you're faced with difficulties in your country, as a body, they come in to also help to lobby, to put pressure on government to see those things have their way. And taking something very important is the liberal approach of the body. Like the distinguished senator said, at every assembly, apart from every other consideration, because we work at committee levels, he's the vice president of the African group. I represent Africa on the Committee on Peace, International Peace and Security. But here, you look at global issues, and we're happy that in this year, despite our backgrounds, the convention was able to arrive and take up the African issue of the flood in Mozambique, Malawi, Zimbabwe as a very critical issue, and now took it up as an emergency item, and we had to pass a resolution to urge governments of nations to take urgent steps to help people from this area. So that is it. And when we have the Boko Haram issue also, we got the support of IPU in helping to put pressure on international board to see the need to support us. We also had this issue of, at the time, the U.S. allegedly refusing selling arms to us to support. We had to also put use the parliamentary diplomacy route of the IPU to see how to put pressure and because we need to solve the security matter. So actually, apart from this meeting as a conference, it also gives an opportunity on meeting on bilateral nature for Parliament, because we are all busy. But at this point, it's easy to arrange meeting between Parliament of Qatar and Nigeria and God of Ghana and this. And I can tell you that have been producing a lot of results. The Senate President at the last assembly met with the President of Ghana, where he raised the issue of Nigerians being displaced in Ghana, business people. And as a result of the outcome of that gave room for exchange visits. And I'm happy that there is a lot of improvement in the issue there. And presently, the Senate President also took up the issue of restriction of visas to Nigerians by Qatar. You can only go to Qatar on official. They don't give visitors visa. They don't. For the past 15 years, if I'm correct. And that's a topical issue which the head of government there have promised to take a look. So to us, apart from the global issues, we also derive this advantage of meeting other parliaments and taking all specific issues that affect our country and theirs, and see how to get them to get their governments to buy into our agenda. So it's just about a forum of fostering cooperation between parliaments and also peace and ensuring peaceful democratic societies.
Yes, you have well explained, some of the functions and relevance of IPU in parliamentary matters, but we would like to know how effective have resolutions coming from IPU been over the years. You have itemized some issues like security matters of different nations that are deliberated upon and all that. But how do you ensure that it is effective in terms of achieving the objective for which those resolutions were made?
Like I said, the most important instrument of the IPU is parliamentary diplomacy. Like I said, what will pass this resolution? Remember, they are not laws. So they are persuasive instruments. So it does not stop at passing the resolution. So steps are taken by IPU to put pressure, to lobby governments, to see the need to toe the line, as well as putting pressure on the national parliament to see them taking local steps and initiatives to ensure that those resolutions are implemented in their own country. I want to take a case study of the Not Too Young to Run again. To help push, the IPU assisted in sponsoring the African Conference on Young Parliamentarians Forum, and especially on the Not Too Young to here in Nigeria. IPU assisted in getting the UN Youth Envoy to visit Nigeria and visit the presidency. In fact, he met with the vice president to say how important that is. So this is part of the role IPU does. Before the crisis in Sudan, the IPU has also created a platform for the South Sudan and also parliamentarians to meet, even in the Caribbean. And so this is the kind of role they are expected to. And expectedly, we also expect that now that IPU is giving Nigeria the desired place in these activities, we're expecting the first week of June, the president of IPU coming in, using Nigeria as an entry route to reach out to other governments in Africa about implementing most of the resolutions we've passed. So that is that.
Yeah, let's bring in again distinguished Senator Kabiru Gaya. We should speak on the bindingness of the resolutions or the utility of the resolutions of the IPU. But I would like you to focus on security, using the Africa Group, for instance, as a launch pad for the role of the IPU. Virtually in all the regions of the continent, you have conflict. In East Africa, the Al-Shabaab, is running riot in Nigeria. We have Boko Haram. We have now bandits and kidnapping. Mali, you know what's going on there. Sudan remains, some trouble area. Libya now, of course, is up in flames. DRC in Congo. So what is the perception of the IPU with regard to these conflict spots on the African continent? And therefore, what are the relevant resolutions to, help to reduce, to drastically, if you like, these areas of conflict on the continent?
Well, as you said, that the IPU has a governing council, and that governing council is headed by the president of the IPU, where Senate President is a member also of the governing council. And these are the pressure groups, whereby they form separate teams that go to lobby in trying to maintain or solve the problem of that particular country. For example, like this issue of insurgency, you talk everywhere, the kidnapping, the riot in so many places and so on. The IPU also comes in, and that's one of the reasons why the president is coming here in June, is to discuss this issue. And then we discuss issues, problems, how we can resolve it. For example, if you don't teach your child love, or you don't give your child love, somebody will now teach him to hate you. So therefore, these are ideas which we have to continue working in trying to bring up the family. Then I was the chairman on issue of insecurity or the crisis in Kaduna and Zamfara State. We were able to also take this matter up because the government have to be more serious on this issue. The involvement of highly placed people, you can see traditional rulers and so on. People got to be punished for being involved into this matter. Unless people are being punished, we cannot be able to stop all this insurgency. And then the other one is the issue of unemployment. Government need to open up more into areas of employment whereby people can be employed, not by government officers, but give them a job to do, improve on agriculture, improve on other systems, skill works, so that the people can be employed, can be busy. And that's where we have those problems. So we from the IPU, a pressure group, as you said, and has been working very well. And I hope I have visit in June, we'll continue to follow those resolutions reached at the last IPU meeting in Qatar. He mentioned the issue of internal problem within us, between one country to another, or between Nigeria and the other country. We have benefited in those discussions with the parliamentarians or leaders of parliament of other countries and Nigeria.
Now, still on the question, the case they asked the senator, IPU as a body that ensures the parliamentary dimension to global matters, especially the conflict that we recently raised. And of course, in Africa, we have a lot of places where there is conflict. And what has what has been the role of IPU to ensure that these conflict areas, the issues are settled? You mentioned Sudan, DRC, and what have you. Does IPU work with other multilateral world bodies like the UN, to see how they can, activate, the resolutions that have been put in place?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, on the issue of security, I want to say this, that IPU sees this as a global issue. And what we do at IPU is identify the areas affected by this and take a country-by-country case. One is important. IPU strategy is looking at the root causes of those crises, like in Nigeria, most African countries. The issue of unemployment, because these young people are not employed. And if they are not engaged and don't have anything, they say the idle mind is the devil's workshop. They become prone to invitation from anti-democratic elements to be used in. So that is there, and we need to tackle the issue of that. Yes, in Libya, it may not be the same. Maybe fight for resources. This is where IPU comes in. We have a permanent representative at the UN. We work with the UN. From the findings and the information feel as they pick from parliamentarians in this area, they bring them into concrete positions and transfer to UN for them to also look into these areas in their cause or in their case of creating peace in this area. And most times we also serve as a platform, as a bridge between the warring factions. And in any country where there's conflicts, especially if it's political, it affects the parliament too. You see the parliament divided in those lines. And I can tell you the fastest and quickest way of resolving such crises is bringing the warring parliamentarians together. If they can see things from the same page, it's easier to transmit it to the head of government on the needs too. And also, specifically, the IPU also puts pressure on international organizations who are supposed to take certain actions in some conflict areas. So it's happening in Sudan now. And I can tell you that one thing you have to also understand is that IPU respect the sovereignty of every state. So like I said, what we'll continue to do as a group is to put the desired pressure on government, on parliaments, on UN agencies, on statutory agencies to do the needful so as to solve those problems. We can't carry arms and go there. Besides, also, like I said, as a part of solving the problem here, they helped in intervening in lobbying for arms to be sold. Now, part of the issues taken at this assembly was the issue of coming out to condemn the use of mercenaries in conflict area, and all parliaments have been charged with that, to look into areas in their country and come up with legislation or resolution that way, make it difficult for government or those people. And part of it also is for us to look into the operations of these people who are being used to bring in machinery. And it has been traced, IPU found out, that most of the security companies used within this conflict area, also operating in countries, are used as sources of bringing in mercenaries to further,
private military contractors. I just wondered, Honorable Ibokwe and Senator Gaya, I'm sure, Nigerians raise this issue time and time again. Every once in a while you see the matter on the social media. It would be interesting to hear from you whether, for instance, the IPU does a peer reportage of the earnings of lawmakers around the world, and whether, of course, the issue of Nigerian lawmakers and what they earn also comes up. That's one. And secondly, in terms of executive legislature relationships, I'm sure again you are familiar with reports, some of it misleading, that of course the 8th Assembly has had a cantankerous relationship with the executive branch. What are the peer reports, assuming any of those matters come up on AOB at the General Assembly of the IPU?
Well, issues really in that aspect, the IPU encourages harmony and good relation between the executive and legislature, but does not encourage compromising the rule of law in the National Assembly. Whatever it takes for us to do our job effectively, we should do it. we should not just be like a rubber stamp. We should do what the people want. We should do what the electorate want from us. We should do what will make the country move forward. We should just stand on our own as legislators. And in some places, there are 2 parliaments, in other places, but in some places, they have only 1 parliament. But the Nigerian factor is very good. We have 2 parliaments, the Senate and the House of Rep. It's very difficult to be able to say all the 2 groups go on one straight line. So this kind of issue of good relations between the parliament. I remember, yes, I know that last Senate we had our member in that last Senate too, with the problem between the executive and legislature was really not an easy thing. And this time what we're trying to do is make sure that we do not have that kind of problems, like having a Senate president from one party and the deputy Senate president from another party. We just hope this time, since we have the majority under our APC, we'll be able to have both the president and the vice and the deputy Senate president from one party, and then we work as a team. In the Senate, we are parliamentarians. We believe that we are all senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, just like the House of Rep members are also House of Rep members of Nigeria, not particular tribe or religion or zone. I am from Kano South, but when I'm in the chamber, I believe I'm a Nigerian. I'm there to serve Nigeria, not the senator from Kano South. So the issue really is to unite ourselves and be able. So the IPU always insists on the independence of legislature, and because that is the core thing, and that's why when we come to the meetings at the end of the parliament, we insist on our independence, we insist on our power. And as he said earlier, that the United Nations gives us backing. They respect the views of IPU. IPU is the highest body that when they make resolutions, it's being respected all over the world. So I believe that that's a strong group and which Nigeria should continue to enhance and maintain that group so that we could continue to have the power. Maybe one day this country can take over the president of IPU, and take over the power.
All right, I would like to Honorable Nana also his final thoughts on this very issue of the parliamentarians' conduct. We've just heard that the new elected parliamentarians who will be sworn in due course have been inducted and have been passed through some tutelage with respect to the norms of practice, in the National Assembly. And will it be injected into the 9th Assembly so that we don't experience what we had in the 8th Assembly between the presidency and, of course, the National Assembly?
Well, taking back from the earlier comment, the IPU is a global body, and like I said, respects the sovereignty of every state. And the income, salaries, and allowances of legislators is determined by the individual nation or country based on your laws and your resources. So yes, on the country by country, we relate and have a review of what it looks like. But I can tell you that the Nigerian situation is a far cry for what you have in other developed climes, democracies. And they come to imagine, because we have greater number of representation. 1, number of members in parliament. 2, we are representing more population than most of all those other countries. And for them, if we go by the rules, the allowances are created out of the number, the population represented. That is the standard. Even in IPU, your voting strength is a function of your population. So, but that's a discussion for another day. What is important is, as a people, whatever you are paid, to give in your best and make sure there's productivity and let the people appreciate it.
Nigerian National Assembly members,
yes.
Would you appreciate a downward review of your pay at the moment?
I don't see any need for it now. In fact, for there to be effective oversight of the parliament, to serve as a check to the excesses of the executive, I think more needs to be given to the National Assembly. I'll give you an example. I'm a member of the Public Accounts Committee. As I speak, there's no provision in the budget for the Auditor General to be able to audit the Federation account and audit all the old embassies we have. How do you operate? And we have to hold the Auditor General account to produce us reports of his audit reports so that we can further take action. So how many, we cannot be able, with the way it is, because of our population, number of agencies we have, we don't. But like I said, let it be for
another
day. What I want to charge, we have a moral duty to do our job and produce results for Nigeria. That is what is important.
Honorable Nana Ibokwe, member of the House of Reps, we'd like to thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today. We also would like to appreciate distinguished Senator Kabiru Gaya for being on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. We appreciate being here with you too.
All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria still. We're taking a short break now. When we return, we'll be taking a look at the political developments in the Sudan.
You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
All right, now to the second part of our conversation this morning. It's often said that power belongs to the people, and this was demonstrated many times, with the latest being the development in Sudan.
That's right, Kyria. Now, what began as a normal protest against the steep rise in the price of bread last December grew into a huge movement with the demand for the removal of Omar al-Bashir, who had been in power in the Sudan for almost 30 years.
And after 6 days of sit-ins at the defense headquarters, which is also the residence of former President Bashir, the military announced the removal of Omar, and Awad ibn Auf, head of the military council, announced 2-year rule and other decisions.
But the people said no to those decisions by the military council, insisting that a civil administration would need to be put in place. The people also vowed to continue with their protest. This then, of course, led to the resignation of Ibn Auf, who lasted for just about 30 hours on the throne. He announced his resignation as head of the military council.
And already, the new head of the military council has met with representatives of the protesters who presented some demands that they want to be made.
All right, so what are the political developments right now in the Sudan? What does the fall of Omar al-Bashir mean, and what next for that country?
All right, and we have a team of experts that will answer these and other questions very shortly. First, we have Professor Chudi Wazirike. Professor Wazirike is a former member of House of Representatives and International Affairs Analyst. Also, we would like to welcome you to the program, sir.
Thank you.
And also, we have Ambassador Umaru Dahiru, former Nigerian ambassador to Sudan. Good morning, Ambassador. You're welcome.
Good morning.
All right, also here with us in the studios is Professor Oshita, former Director General of the Institute for Peace and Conflict Studies. Professor Oshita, a pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's begin this conversation first with Ambassador Umaru Dahiru, of course, Suleiman Dahiru, of course, who is with us usually on Good Morning Nigeria. What do you make of what is playing out in the Sudan?
In a way, I can say it was delayed. It is something that should have happened a long time ago. The people of Sudan have been living in excruciating poverty. And then they are harassed by the military government with claim of being democratic. But strictly speaking, since 1989, when Omar al-Bashir seized power, Sudan has been governed by the military, even when they claim to have a national assembly. But everything resided with the minister. And that is why the demonstrators were not satisfied when the announcement was made by the former head of state that they were going to rule for 2 years before an election and a new constitution, because that was not what they bargained for. When they came to demonstrate, it was not just that they wanted al-Bashir out of the way. They wanted the military completely out of the way. So for the military to still be calling the shots for another 10 years, 2 years, it is something that is not acceptable to them. That is why within 72 hours, Sudan has the dubious honor of having seen 3 presidents, Omar al-Bashir, Aouf, and the current one.
Okay, Ambassador, let me stay with you still. You know, you've lived in Sudan and have a good understanding of the people of Sudan. Bashir lasted for 30 years, despite the fact that, as you explained, people are living in abject poverty. What are the dynamics of the Sudanese people, you know, that led to that 30-year span of leadership, even when the people were suffering?
It's a complex situation. You have the Arab ruling minority that has dominated everything. And it is this domination of the politics of the Sudan by the Arabs that was the reason why the people of the South started their problem, not their problem except agitating for fairness and justice, leading to war where millions of people were killed, and at the end of it, the Republic of South Sudan was born. So it was all part of the dynamics in that country. We have Darfur, which started in 2003, but up till now, Darfur has not been fully settled. It has not been fully settled because the people of Darfur are not Arabs. And the Arabs are the ones marginalizing them, making life difficult for them. If you go to the Noble Mountains, you still find that there are agitations there. So when you have all these things, and then you have a ruthless military regime, then it becomes difficult for people to come together. But we have to be thankful that at the end of the day, whether you are Arab or non-Arab, they all came together to see the back of Omar al-Bashir, and at the same time to demand immediate return to civilian rule. That is what they want.
All right, Ambassador Dahiru, thank you very much. Professor Waziruke, I mean, when things like this happen, the common saying is another one bites the dust. Did Bashir deserve what has happened to him? And the Sudanese deserve much better?
Yes, the Sudanese actually deserve much better. It's a very old country with a long history going back to ancient Egypt, as you know. You can read it in which way. There's no question that Sudan into Ethiopia was the epicenter of what is called the Nile Valley civilizations. And as the ambassador has said, the coming of Arabs and all the sociological transmutations has yielded all kinds of social issues, social fissures that are all coming out today. But in terms of al-Bashir in particular, it seems to me that we're witnessing again not only the fact that one more bites the dust, as it should, there are about 11 more to go, but I will say very clearly that the people of the Sudan have taken a bold stand and shown very clearly to all the authoritarian and autocratic leaders that we have strewn across Africa that the age of the people has finally arrived. So one can only applaud what has happened here and urge them to be steadfast, but there's no question that there are consequences. The Sudan, as a case study, reflects all the tensions, tragedies, and dynamics that have kept Africa down. There's neocolonialism. There is race. When we come to Darfur and the whole range of things, is a factor. But also the indictment by the international community, the ICC, for instance, the International Criminal Court, against the former president will be an issue at this point in time. Will Bashir be handed over to the ICC or not? The current regime, led by General Abdel Rahman, has made it clear that they will not be handing him over, but it's still early days and so on. The ICC as well as the UN have now made statements to the fact that they want him in custody. It's an issue because for us Pan-Africanists, we're really concerned that the sitting head of state will be tried under these circumstances, and it seems to be a fact that ICC seems to be focusing mostly on African leaders. But that's a separate issue. The question is, are there crimes? I think it's a new day for Sudan. It's a new day for Africa. Very clearly, those who are thinking of Africa in the 21st century should be thankful for what has happened in Sudan, in the sense that it also reinforces the one major principle that will advance Africa's democratic credentials. That is term limits. Power must have term limits. Right now, we have all these leaders like Museveni, Teodoro Obiang, Museveni in Uganda, Obiang in Equatorial Guinea, and quite a number of them who have been there for 30 years, 30-something years. Paul Biya is almost 87, and he just ran for another term of office. Mugabe had to be dragged, kicking and screaming. So we have issues. And Bouteflika was very sick and really should have resigned a long time ago. But he kept on hanging on to power. So it's still a very funny situation. But I would say that the street action by the Sudanese is simply an example of the fact that Africa and the civil society in Africa is not going to be bypassed again. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, all right. Now to Oshita. Did this come to you as a surprise? Omar Bashir has been a strong man. He has survived internal crisis and even external pressures. How did he fall?
Well, thank you very much. I'll start by saying that, like Professor Wazirike said, the age of the people has finally come. It only will have taken the time it took, but it was definitely going to happen. When a strong man is in power, as we have seen in Zimbabwe, for instance, we know that it's just a matter of time because the people can be quiet, but when they respond, when they react, no strong man can withstand them. That's what this second example after Zimbabwe has shown. And so for me, I believe that it was just a matter of time that this was going to happen. Omar Bashir, like has been underscored, has been using the military to keep, coupled with the culture of docility that exists in that environment. He has used that, to shine. But now that shine is gone because the people of Sudan have tested, what the people's power is. And that's why they are standing up to the military and saying, you cannot dictate for us. Because when they started the protest, the military was not with them. And they also know that the military is Omar Bashir's constituency. They have done all this together. So they would never accept what the present Lieutenant General Buran is trying to put across to them. All we pray is that, given the fact that Sudan is situated along what we can describe as a vein of insecurity, from Libya down, to the south. We just pray that the protests will have, will be well managed so that it does not go beyond, what we expect. They should be able to develop a framework that, though will not have the military in the center, should be able to have a leader that will be able to take them through these difficult times. Because they are not being able to do that has serious consequences for countries along what I have described as the vein of violence, which is already hemorrhaging, from Libya to Chad, Central African Republic, to DRC. And of course, if the vein spreads either left or right, then Nigeria will be affected. On the other side, you will find that countries like Kenya, Uganda is already, the north of Uganda is there with its peculiar problems. So there are so many factors that can derail what is happening in the Sudan. And we are worried as security observers of what might happen in the end.
All right. Professor Oshita, thank you very much. I'd just like to return to Professor Wazirike Kiria, and that has to do with trying to understand the global response to what's unfolding in the Sudan. And that global response, I would like us to focus essentially on the AU, that's the African Union. We had seen in the 21st century an abhorrence of military coups on the continent, and it seemed at some point that what played out, or what was playing out in the Sudan, was a usurpation of people's power by the military, coming in, as it were, to stage a coup and then prescribing a 2-year transition period. We also saw what happened in Algeria. In your opinion, what has been the AU response, and what ought to be the AU response to all of these developments? Is it that, look, allow these guys to fall with a thud?
Yes, thank you very much. The reality is that in this age of a global economy, in this age of a global society and all that is coming, including some dangerous technologies that sort of will eventually make all these arguments almost redundant. The rest of the world, the more advanced countries are developing things that will have implications for security down the line. But to your more specific question on the AU, there's no question that the AU has always taken a stand, especially since the fall of the end of the Cold War and the coming of this new era of democratization, that the only governmental system that can be recognized are those that obey electoral rules and so on. The AU has protested to the extent that they can. You understand the AU is not yet a very strong institution. They can't really, they can only condemn. They can't really do much more than that, as it were. But very clearly, the response from across Africa has been very positive. Omar Bashir is almost like Mugabe of Zimbabwe, and many more like that. Eventually, there will be a crisis in Cameroon that is still building up. They have been there for too long. But I think that the new element that has come into African political evolution is really the whole question of term limits. That's really what made democracy sustainable in many parts of the world. Imagine if a leader anywhere in the advanced country is going to stay in power forever. It's an issue. Even the current changes in China that seem to favor the incumbent in terms of a very extended stay is going to be an issue. But I think very clearly that as the AU builds towards creating a new African society, the whole question of geriatric, but as well as overstaying, all these factors will come into play. So they're watching at this point. So finally, you made mention of the fact that it seems the military is still in the game. I think the military has to be in the game at this point. I don't agree with those. I don't know what Ambassador thinks, because there are all kinds of other issues in Sudan. But very clearly, when you have the potential of a total breakdown of law and order, the military must somehow or the other be part of the solution. So I think that all of us are encouraged by the meeting that took place just yesterday, or Saturday, I think, between the new military and representatives of the people. So let's see how that works out. 2 years seems like a long time. I would have said 1 year maybe, but they can't just go on as if nothing happened. Something has happened. They need to reconstitute themselves, as it were, and the AU needs to support them. The issue still remains that of the ICC and what happens to al-Bashir, but we'll come to them, sure.
All right, gentlemen, there may be conflicting interests in the way and manner world bodies and the governments have been reacting to the development in Sudan. Of course, EU has come up to condemn any form of a coup d'etat. I'm not sure what the UN had said, but of course, the American government has met Sudanese authorities. So the question I'm asking is that, yes, Omar Bashir should go. Then how did he go? Is it a plus for coup d'etat? If not, what should be the response at this moment to see how the military will be well taken care of to ensure that they hand over to the civilian regime in Sudan? Ambassador, if I may ask you this, how possible is it, for Sudanese to accept 2 years of a military transition period?
The Sudanese have already rejected the 2-year term the military earmarked for itself. Now, whether the protesters will agree or not, because the protesters are not just ordinary people, they are professional bodies, all involved. And these professional bodies have rejected the 2-year term. And when I spoke at another forum, I said, 2 years is too long for people who have been tired of military rule. In fact, ruthless military rule. It could be done within 1 year. After all, we did it in Nigeria within 11 months. So Sudan can do it within 12 months. All that they need to do is to get the professional bodies.
But they have no political institutions at the moment.
Pardon?
They have no political institutions that function at the moment.
That's the problem.
Yes. You see, what the military is trying to do is to buy time. They want to get a new constitution. They want this or that. But what they have forgotten, but what the people know, is that they were all members of the Armed Forces Council. So they were all part of the decision-making process when al-Bashir was there. Therefore, they don't have anything different to offer. What I think the military should do to save itself from embarrassment and disgrace is to say, okay, the professional bodies nominate 10 people. The military or the armed forces and the security services will nominate 10 and sit down with a prominent, respected Sudanese civilian at the head to run the country for 12 months, within which they will organize everything, including the constitution, with the military at the background, but not at the front. Once they are at the front, they are not sure what will happen. And let me say it. The Sudanese government of al-Bashir, of which the current rulers were part of, has a record of signing agreements and repudiating the same agreements. So the people are aware that the military may say 2 years and later on renege on the 2 years period. And that is why I agree that the civilians or the protesters, led by the professional bodies, including university professors, medical doctors, and the rest, should continue. Let them continue to pile pressure on the military to realize that the Sudanese are tired of military rule. And in fact, it has run out of fashion, not only in Sudan, but all over the world.
Ambassador Dahiru, thanks. But your position, of course, is diametrically opposed to what Professor Waziruke said, that, the military can, if I'm quoting you right, be the face while we're having this transitional arrangement. And that's why I asked the question earlier. How would it be that, at an AU summit, you have a military man in uniform sitting amongst the heads of state? We haven't seen that for a long while. What happened in Zimbabwe in November 2017 occurred, the rationalization was, it's not a coup, it's resignation, formal resignation by Mugabe, and there was a promise of immediate elections with the coming in of Emerson Mnangagwa. Well, but that's the point.
Just a point of correction,
Yes.
because I substantially agree with the roadmap
Yes.
Initiated by the ambassador. You know, what I was thinking is some sort of condominium, you know, where there are civilian leaders and there are military leaders. You know, you don't ban one institution, and largely because one also needs to know it's a political process. You have to worry about the political parties. It's the political parties that drive the political process, or should drive the political process. The organized political parties are just they're not as active as one would. I know about the coalition of professionals that are driving things right now. But it's really the politicians and the political leaders in the political parties that will have to deal with the military as an institution. I don't think that street protesters can assume the bodies of governance just like that. There has to be a structure. That's why I ended by saying that it's really wonderful in a way that the military who are now in government, as well as the civilians who are pushing this, are now talking to each other. But what I expect will happen is that, because Sudan has a long political history, it's a fairly complex and highly sophisticated political, they've had a lot of experience over the past 150 years. So the same parties have always been there. What are they doing? What are they saying? They have to be part of the equation. So I expect them to probably create some kind of discussion, some kind of constitutional assembly, and work out their future collectively.
All right. Now to Professor Oshita, Pastor, before we return to you. Sudan, as Professor Wazuke pointed out, is a nation that's had a checkered political history. And since Omar Bashir came to power in 1989, according to Ambassador, the country has not been well led, you know, in terms of economy, education, and other sectors of national development. How can this nation come out of this quagmire, you know, considering other, you know, historical antecedents of other nations that they may have passed through what Sudan is passing through at the moment?
Well, right now, the most important thing is how to get out of this cul-de-sac. And I think, as Ambassador Dahiru has stated, for me, I understand clearly that the military is an interested party, and there is serious conflict of interest in whatever they profess to be doing to get them out, to get the country out of, you know, this present situation. So I believe that the most important thing is for them to get experts, to get professionals, you know, constitute according to their own, you know, demography and other interests that, you know, exist in Sudan. One that will be agreed, you know, to by all of them, so that they can, you know, lead the process. The military mustn't lead that process. So once they find that out and they constitute a government, then the business of normal governance will resume. Because right now, it's going to be difficult to talk about, you know, normal governance. The first thing is to constitute institutions that will drive governance. As at yesterday, judges in Sudan have decided that they are not going to be part of what is going, if those institutions are still there. A similar thing to what is happening in Algeria, where judges have also said that they are not going to participate if the institutions of the outgone leader are still in place. So now people are beginning to be critical of what exists in the country. So they must chart a course that will, you know, as we say, we have a clean slate. You know, what the philosopher John Rawls would call tabula rasa. Let's have a clean slate and then start from there. And then so that they can say, okay, the al-Bashir business is gone. And that is when the military is not part of it. Or is in the background, at best in the background.
I'm wondering, Professor Oshita and gentlemen, I mean, Professor Wazuke did talk about the fact that Sudan has a long history, political and otherwise. Ambassador Dahiru, based on your tour of duty, tell us something, even if we were to use a 60-year period. After independence in 1956, Sudan has been politically unstable. We're talking now about Omar al-Bashir, you know, who got toppled after 30 years. But there was also before him a military ruler, Ghafani Mary, you know, who got overthrown in 1985.
They were generals before El Numeri.
Yeah, before that.
General
Absolutely. So is there an entrenchment of the military in the politics of the Sudan? And if so, how might the Sudanese extricate themselves from the iron grip of the military on the political destiny of the Sudan?
You see, when people enjoy a privileged position, they don't like letting it go. They have been enjoying this privileged position for years. And although there was semblance or facade of democracy under Omar al-Bashir, but it was not there. Now, for the military, I don't think they just want to be pushed away like that. They want to find a way to still be part of the system, even though they know that military rule is out of fashion. But at the same time, they have misread the situation. They misread the situation because they didn't take into account the Arab Spring that started in Tunisia, which spread to other Arab countries. While other Arab countries started taking palliative measures to placate their own people, Sudan thought that it would not come to them. But then Algeria started. When Algeria started, actually they wanted Bouteflika out, but at the same time, Bouteflika made a mistake that he was seeking another term at the age of 82 and wheelchair bound. So the people felt that they had enough. He must go. He must go not only after the end of his tenure, but immediately. And then the people in Sudan saw what was happening. And the National Congress Party in Sudan made the mistake of saying that al-Bashir would style re-election. And the people felt that, oh, so we are going to be stuck with this man again. So the whole thing started. And then the man that took over from al-Bashir was one of the three people indicted together with al-Bashir. So it didn't change the situation. And this man is now there. But he has a big problem. The big problem he has is that the people don't want him, especially when you have demonstrators led by the most enlightened members of the society. You have to be very careful.
Where were the professionals all the while? That, again, Professor Wazirike, you may have factored this into your response as to whether the Sudanese might, either in the short term or in the long term, be able to extricate themselves from the military class, because the military class has been politicized, obviously, in the post-independence history of Sudan.
And in addition to that, these are people who understand military language, for a very long time. Should there be need for kind of a reorientation? Because what Kingsley is saying, how do they extricate themselves from a system that has run for so many years? I had one CNN reporter from Sudan who said that she was 11 years, when the man came to power. Now she's over 30, 37 or thereabout. So what the language, the only name people that grew up in the last 30 years know is Omar Bashir. So how do we now bring people back to democratic principles, norms and values?
He was a military officer.
Exactly.
Yeah, Professor Wazirike.
Yeah, Kingsley, what you and Kiran are talking about is really the crux of the matter. And the ambassador has alluded to this in every way. Do we have a culture of democracy that is sustainable in Africa? The culture we have is that of authoritarianism, to tell you the truth. Whether it's in villages, whether it's in our religious institutions, the reality is that authoritarian disposition is really a way of life, and especially in the Middle East. You have to look at the Sudan in the context of the Middle East, as the ambassador was also beginning to allude, Tunisia, Algeria, the African part of the Middle East. Reality is that there genuinely was an Arab Spring that shook up things, but only a little bit. It was followed by what is often called the Arab Winter, where their society fell apart and anarchism let loose, as it were. All those refugees crossing the Mediterranean, those were mostly Arab refugees and so on, flooding into Europe. In other words, the autocratic leaders lost grip, whether it's Gaddafi or whether it's the man in Libya or Iraq and so on, as well as what happened in Syria. They lost grip. But at the same time, what followed was not really democratic. In fact, there's hardly any example of Arab democracy that we have today. The culture is authoritarian and autocratic in a way. But the people themselves, and this is just really to answer your question more directly, the times have changed. Whether the military likes it or not, whether any cabal likes it or not, whether any group thinks that they can rule forever, reality quite simply is that changes are underway in a global economy, in this age of globalization. People have the information they need. In the old days, things were possible or impossible depending on one's location on the curve of information. Right now, the young child in Tunisia, the young person in Saudi Arabia, they have a lot of information. Look at what happened when Saudi Arabia committed one of the worst international crimes one can remember. Everybody knew what happened right away. They could not hide it. And whether they have a panel discussion or whether they have an indictment or not, the world knows that a crime has been committed and Saudi Arabia operates that way. So you have a situation where as time moves on, as the middle classes in Sudan grow stronger, and this particular example of success will make them, because this is really their greatest success since 1956, can only make them stronger. And I agree clearly that if the professional middle classes remain strong, and the reason why before I saw a lot of caution is that this is tend to degenerate into anarchy if you don't take time. Within the military always progresses. If the progressive wing of the military gain control and then can work with political institutions as well as the with politicians. We don't like politicians in this country, but clearly you need people whose job is thinking about politics, strategies about politics. They could be very dangerous if left alone. If they all come together, then a new Sudan can be born.
Professor Oshita, there is a note of caution from Professor Wazirike. What could possibly go wrong with what is unfolding in the Sudan? Because you just talked about now, if you continue to have the moderate military political class in this process, then things might be okay. But if the extremists were to gain control, those, for instance, who were behind the atrocities in Darfur, what might therefore go wrong, and what therefore also ought to be the precautionary response of the international community, particularly, the regional organizations?
One thing we have to know, and I hinted that earlier, that in order to be sure that this does not derail, we have to monitor, including the role of the diaspora, the Sudan diaspora. Given the fact that this is a country of interest for a long time for the international community, the diaspora influence in what is happening in the Sudan must also be monitored. And I think that the military will do itself a great favor if it withdraws a bit and gives a facade, even if it's just a facade of civilians leading this, potential revolution. I think we have to be careful. You know that Omar al-Bashir was supported by Islamists, in that government. Now, it is important to check so that those do not, come to the front. The other thing is that the Janjaweed influence is still, in the background, and those are capable of throwing a new card into the entire scenario. So these are things to watch. So in my view, the military should step back, project a leader from among the civil populace who would, be the face of what is the transformation that is going to happen, so that a transition, will be seen to be led by the people. Because the people have not tasted this before. This is the first time, and they will not give up. This is an opportunity which they would like to, to see how it ends.
And of course, those military brass have not also tested the civilian regime because if they withdraw totally, as we are saying it, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, because they're entrenched, in all sectors of the economy. And don't forget that these are those who supported Omar Bashir for 30 years. Some of them may like to retire as military officers and, of course, to run for presidency. That's one of the reasons somebody was given as, look, these people want to delay. Perhaps some of them retire and they take political positions. And let's see what plays out, as time goes on. We don't have time to deliberate more on this as we are about to read out some of the messages coming from our viewers by way of the tweets. And the first I have Sani Michael or Makoji. He says, the situation in Sudan is a lesson to African leaders who hold on to power as if it's their birthright. From presidency to prison after 30 years in power. It is greed that had led to that. Thus, African leaders should know when to bow out of power before it's too late for them.
Dele Jack Solomon has this tweet now. Lessons learned from the toppling of Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir. Good governance is a precursor to sustaining power and authority in contemporary African states and the world at large. Respect for the rule of law and human dignity and avoiding a currency crisis is a must. Okay?
All right, Mutana Farouk. Laws are not insufficient to provide a robust governance, but too fragile to be broken by those who implement and interpret them. A layman is predisposed to govern easily, but he could be fierce when the society takes him for granted. I urge the leaders to live by example.
Ostino, that's Edu Austin, that's the Twitter handle. This is a lesson for the likes of Museveni and all those African leaders who have been in power for decades. The Nigerian political class are not immune if they keep enriching themselves while others live in poverty. What is happening in Sudan may happen elsewhere if the political leaders and their families and friends live a life of luxury while the rest of citizens are in penury.
All right, Mubarak, the political situation in Sudan is a call for many African leaders to have to heal. Now, power belongs to the people, actually, and voice travels with speed of light. Sudan need a robust democratic government. I think patience is all they need to achieve this.
Let me go straight to Ortega. Ortega says the political situation in the Sudan sends a clear signal to every dictator around the world that you don't underestimate the value of the supreme power of the people.
All right, and Mike Anyako says the political situation in Sudan is very unfortunate. It is high time African nations dealt decisively with despots.
Now, al-Mubarak tweets, this time the AU has to play a crucial role in Sudan. They are not only needed in conflict resolution. Putting in place a working democratic system is never a matter of hiring experts. They should be allowed to come up with a structure of how they want their government to be.
And at this point, we would like to call it a day, Kingsley. Yes, we don't have time again for any more messages, and so let's begin to appreciate our guest this morning, Professor Chudi Uwazurike. We thank you for coming, one-time member of the House of Representatives. Thank you for your professional input. And Ambassador Suleiman Dahiru, former Nigerian ambassador to Sudan, the man who understands Sudanese people very well. It's been a pleasure hosting you this morning on this show. And Professor Ushita, of course, is the former director of General Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution. And of course, now he is the executive director of Ubuntu Center for Africa Peace Building and Development. Thank you also for being part of our show this morning.
Thank you.
All right, now let's join our foreign desk for latest development globally.
Government of South Sudan has debunked rumor about the closure of the country's airspace, while saying that the Sudan situation does not in any way affect its airspace operation, but only flights that use the Sudanese airspace were affected by the situation. This is coming after Sudan closed its airspace and all borders last week due to the military ousting of President Umar al-Bashir, birthed from pressure from anti-government protests. Ivanka Trump is promoting women's participation in the workplace in Ethiopia. This is part of the U.S. government's initiative to be benefited by 50 million women in developing countries by 2025. Trump's U.S. policy in Africa prioritized the war on terror and checking the influence of China in Africa.
All right, let's go over now to the Weather Center to check out what the prospects will be like for the rest of today.
Hello. Most cities within the country are expected to experience fine weather conditions on Monday, but of course with a chance or two of rainfall activities over the southern cities. And so Monday over the northern areas are expected to have partly cloudy to sunny spells with patches of clouds over the central parts of the country. However, mostly cloudiness are expected as we move further southward. There are chances of Sunday night thunderstorms to give rise to morning weather over the Mambila Plateau, Makurdi, Lafia, parts of Ikom, Obudu, and Enugu axis in the morning, while elsewhere in the south remains cloudy towards the afternoon and evening hours. And this will give rise to scattered thunderstorms activities in the coastline and the inland areas of the southern cities, with increased cloudiness across the central parts of the country during the afternoon period. And up north will still remain partly cloudy to sunny. And now here are the temperatures we can expect across the country. Thank you for watching, and see you again.
All right, so that does it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria. I would like to thank you for tuning in. We are back tomorrow at 7 in the morning. Until then, do enjoy the rest of your day. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kieran Umayo, joining Kingsley to wish you the best of today.